Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
Innovative Thinkers, episode number 312. Innovative Thinkers. Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black entrepreneur experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards, Chief Content Officer, co-producer, and co-host with legendary NFL coach Pete Carroll on the Amplified Voices podcast and host of the Unlikely podcast, Audrey.
Hello.
I've given our audience such a brief bio. Why don't you fill in the gaps and share with our audience what you'd like them to know about you and the business that you're working in?
Absolutely. So I am a bit of a hybrid. I started off in the entertainment business on camera and performance. And I really thought that's what I was going to do with the rest of my life because I was so passionate about it since I was a young girl. But then I did this amazing pivot in my mid-20s where I went to a personal development seminar and it just blew me away because it was a bit of theatrics while still completely transforming the human beings on the other side. And I just saw people step up and have power and freedom and joy in areas that they didn't. And I just thought to myself, I want some of that. So I threw myself into that world and rose through the ranks pretty quickly over the next 10 years. And then at some point, I just thought, wow, maybe it was meant to be. It was part of my purpose to be in the entertainment business. It was part of my life track and purpose to go into executive training and coaching. What if I brought the two together? What would that be? I did. I spent a couple of years mentoring with George Lucas's producing partner at Lucasfilm. I opened my own agency, my media agency, and really specialized in short form storytelling and scaling businesses. And that took off. And I have helped launch an island for a billionaire. I've brought a biotech company that was in democratizing the clinical trial process to public in the brand that I developed. And now I'm with Pete Carroll. And I had a meeting with him and talked him into starting a storytelling company because he is such a unique human being that he's in one of the most competitive, cutthroat industries of professional sports as a white man and has had the experience of being effective with teams and all that, but also working with Black men. The predominant amount of men that he works with is Black males. And that's so rare that you could say any white male would be in $1 billion organization and have experience effectively with diversity at that level. I was invested and interested. And he also has this unique experience of being someone who has never compromised his humanity or others for the sake of winning. He's always treated every single person as if they were his own family. He's very much exists on the foundation of leading with your heart, speaking from your heart, talking to people and listening to them as their purpose and bringing out the best possible in them. And I thought, if he was interested, it would be so amazing if we can have a podcast company and amplify other voices. And that's exactly what we did. So we kicked off the company at the beginning of January. We brought out our first podcast in June, mid-year. And we've already won an award. We've already been nominated for another up against Oprah Winfrey's media company. So that was pretty great. And we'll have 7 podcasts out by January. So I'm really excited. And that's a unique bit about my background.
Talk about your connection with Pete Carroll and having that conversation. Let's form a partnership.
Great. So I was introduced to Pete by his daughter. His daughter found me. We sat down and had a conversation. At that time, he was, of course, still the coach of the Seahawks in the NFL. But he had a consulting company because so many large corporations like Google and Microsoft and Nike and all of them were so interested in getting his brain trust in how he can create coaching cultures as effectively and human-based as he has. The consulting company had been around for 8 years and they were looking for somebody to come in and bring it to its next level of success. So that's why her name is Jamie. And she originally talked to me for that idea. But as I was sitting there, I thought, oh my goodness, consulting projects, while they're tremendous and profitable, they do tend to be more about what the organization wants versus you being able to really open up voices and diversify the narrative of what leadership and team building and humanity contribution looks like. And so as I spoke to Jamie, his daughter, she was like, oh, you have to meet Pete. And I got on the phone with Pete. And after a couple of hours of us talking, he said, well, what idea do you have? I'm so invested in talking to you. You really get it. You really get what I'm talking about. You get my whole background. And I was like, oh, I do. I get you. I get who you are completely. And I just said to him, I said, listen, I have a much bigger idea for you. I know you've done a lot of philanthropic work. I know you want to continue that on. And I know that you love bringing out purpose in others. I know you love amplifying people. I'm going to tell you right now, the greatest way that you can do this at this legacy state of your life, the greatest way that you could do this is if you get into storytelling, because you can get up underneath their voices. You can get up underneath spreading them out. You can give somebody a platform, especially if Pete shares his platform that he has, which is so tremendous in the millions. If you share your platform with different voices, you can catapult them into the zeitgeist, like pretty much like overnight. We took a number of conversations. It took about 30 days for us, just meetings and coming over the house and talking to him and his wife and them thinking about it and talking about it. And finally he was like, yeah, I see it. I can see it. I don't know how you're going to do this, Audrey, but I can see it. And so that was it. That was December of last year. And then in January, we put together the legal organization. We took off.
Talk about legacy. When it's all said and done, how do you want to be remembered?
You know, it's interesting. For the longest time, I thought that I wanted to be remembered. And now I don't care. The only experience that I know that I will have is in the present. That's what I do now. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I know my goals, but I have enough age underneath me that I know when they say, tell us what your goals are and then watch God laugh or whatever that quote is. I do understand that now. I have a bit of the humor in that too, and unexpected nature of life. The more seasoned I am, the years that go by, I start to understand that it doesn't matter if I'm remembered. It doesn't matter if I make X amount of money or if I win X amount of awards. It's really about the full opportunity to express and make a difference in this moment. And so I will give myself for as long as I'm here to give myself, and I have the capacity to. And when I am gone, it's someone else's time. I hope I've created enough space for other people to have a foundation, because I am certainly, like Maya Angelou says, I'm certainly standing on the shoulders of other people and in gratitude of that. But I honor other people's legacy, other people like Pete that talk to me and say, hey, this is how I would like to leave things. I'm like, yeah, I'm all for it because I'm here now. So
talk about your most memorable moment in life or business.
Oh my goodness, there's so many of those, right? You know, I would say, because you didn't say whether it was a positive moment or a negative moment. And I think sometimes some of our most negative moments truly become the most expansive ones. And I would say it was a moment where I was just had this, it was in elementary school and I had the hugest crush on this young guy. And it was a white male. And there was this experience that I had of like, that I wasn't judging myself. I was completely free. I had these emotions. These emotions made me very happy. And I remember going over and we had hung out at his house and his mom came home and she was like, okay, you guys, she has to go. And so then I left. I lived only a few blocks away. And the next day I was like, oh, can I come over another time? And he said, no. And she had said something, a racist slang about me for him to never hang out with me again. And it was that moment, it was the first moment that I realized that I wasn't accepted. I was so shocked. I had never had that experience before in my life. And it's interesting, Dr. Richards, because that moment I can see was the beginning of the moment where incident after incident after incident in my experience for me started to occur for me, that there were more and more reminders or more and more statements to me that I was an outlier, that I didn't have a tribe, that I didn't belong. I was so ambitious as a young person. Oh, no, but you're a woman. You can't do that. And those things, the reason why I say that was one of the most influential that in my personal life and my career, because I really don't think there is a separation for me, especially, is because that experience of being an outlier, of not belonging, has become my greatest gift possible that I can contribute to other people. because I see things as an outlier that other people don't notice. I have a hyper perspective on who people are because I have been watching since I was a little girl. I have been watching everything, how people talk, how people move their bodies, the things they don't say, the things that they say, the things that are unsaid and the things that they say. And I've become an expert. And then I've gotten tools up underneath that and training up underneath that. And now it's a superpower of mine. So there is something that people always say about me, which is when Audrey's in the room, she's going to hear things that no one has heard. And even with the biggest names that I've dealt with, when I speak up at a meeting and they say, well, how did you hear that? You figured out something about our business that we've been working 30 years on. And I'm like, yeah, because I listened from that place. So that to me was a huge contribution that happened in my life.
That's awesome. And it reminds me of a training that I had taken about that third level listening.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like that's your zone of genius.
Yeah, it is my zone. I just have, as I've gotten older, I've had to become responsible for, while I have that skill set as an outlier, I have to be responsible for speaking up for myself to be included, because otherwise I leave other people with that I'm unapproachable or, oh, she's not like one of us. I've had to do the work. Now that I have, it's like having a really strong right arm and then you got a little wimpy left arm. It's like I had to build up my left arm to be like, okay, I'm this bold person who can speak up. I don't care how many people you put in front of me. I can talk. I don't care how many minutes you give me to prepare. I'll be ready and I'll empower people, whatever you tell me the outcome you want. But I couldn't even sit in front of one person and have a conversation. I was so shy and uncomfortable and such an introvert. That's the part I had to develop, the intimacy of conversation, the intimacy of dialogue. Openly sharing things about myself and telling myself I'm safe no matter what happens. That was something I had to ensure. And so now I feel that I've come to a point, and it's very much how I lead as well, that I lead from this space of revealing things about myself so that other people feel like I'm not in some position that they have to just listen to me and not have any thoughts for their own self or have their own voice that they speak up to say in our meeting. So like everybody else, I'm a work in progress.
I've heard a quote that your why should make you cry. Tell me your why.
100% to see people. I think that my why is so built around the experience that I told you and then the cascade that happened after that, which is being so not seen and so not heard and having to build this thick skin and this level of resilience that was quite unnecessary, really. It's sort of like I had to dial it down as I gotten older and soften it up a bit. And I think that's one of the greatest things about when you go through challenges like that and you can transform it and you can bring that sort of chrysalis process as the caterpillar to the butterfly. When you bring that, it is a choice. It's not mandatory, but it is a choice for us at that point to say, oh, I now have popped into a world where I have facility with it. I understand why I went through that. It now, like you said, becomes a superpower. And that superpower then becomes a choice. Will you contribute that to other people to make their burden less? And that's where I feel that for me, my why is that I will see you, that I will hear you, and that you will experience love with me. And your purpose will shine in my space. And that is what happens when people are around me. They get such clarity around why they exist, what is important to them, how to utilize it, how to focus it. Whether it's been my personal relationships or my professional relationships, when there is a pathway through me and people do get more successful, they start to get this kind of crystallization around their purpose. And that's mine. And it brings me every bit of joy.
Let's talk about an attitude of gratitude. Fill in the blanks. Thank you, pandemic, because.
Well, this was interesting. Thank you, pandemic, because this may sound a little bit selfish, but it really had given me an experience, and I'm sure many people that are introverts are covert introverts and suffer because of that, because it's not as accepted in society. It gave everybody an opportunity to have a level of compassion around constraints. And I think that I'm as pained as I am for the impact that happened on society and what people went through. For me, I felt such a deeper connection with people because they were a bit thrown off their game. There was nothing to hide in. There was no busy traffic and I can't talk to you. Everybody was like raw and revealed and open. I had the most intimate conversations with people in my life, shared, not just me listening, but like completely shared. And it also, for me, while I had been so profoundly committed to the representation of diversity in terms of my teams, I'd always been somebody that walked in with organizations and been like, okay, come on, you guys, you better do a better job and let's get in there. And people knew me that way. I was not inherently in a business that was about amplifying specifically diverse voices and expanding the narrative of what leadership looked like, what size it was, what color it was, what its hair looked like, all of that, its expression. But during the pandemic and when George Floyd was murdered, that I just made a decision. I had a different company at that time, a project that I was launching. And I just said, no, every bit of my existence, what I do professionally, I'm not doing anything unless it's going to rise Black voices, if it's going to rise the diverse voices, if it's going to bring this world together. And especially, and I felt that this was so in tune with my purpose too, because coming from a white mother and a dark father, I felt also part of my purpose was I had grown up in the bridge. I embody that bridge of bringing the white body and the dark body together in its differences. And I thought, well, I guess my whole life has been living up to this moment, right? I wouldn't even be doing what I was doing if the pandemic and all of the tragedy that year happened. So I feel completely blessed and very, very hyper in tune to when you have moments in history where there's a paradigm shift. It's like a little bit of a door being cracked open that was typically locked, and you better be ready to walk through. And that's how I felt this past year, that there was a shift of guard, that there was a shift of change, that there was something happening in the world. As tragic as it was also this incredible opportunity for voices to rise up, for people to stand up, and no time to waste. And so I've been diligently working since last year, nonstop, on being able to put this foundation underneath it. So I feel very blessed that we went through that time, or that I personally went through that time.
Audrey, I'm going to go a little bit personal, and something you said about being, and I love what you talked about, embodying the bridge and having a white mom and a very dark dad, and that whole biracial mix. Talk about that from a perspective as a child. And I'm asking you as a grandmother who has an African-American son who married a Caucasian woman that now have several diverse children. And for me, bridging that gap of history and feeling like, is it a oneness? Is my grandchildren going to learn the whole?
Well, okay. So what was my experience from the young girl's view? I felt in so many ways, and I'm sure this will be a very different slant than what your wonderful family life is like, but I felt very tragic. I felt very alone being multiracial that way. And part of it was because my dad comes from South America. So it's an Afro-Latin background. And my mom comes from Europe. She's from Germany. And then they met in church I'm from Oakland, California. So they met there when they were in their teens. So I not only had the multiracial, I also had immigrant parents. So I was American when I was born, but they weren't American. My dad came from another country and was very influenced by cinema. So white women were his attraction. And so for me growing up, there was so many layers because at that time, there were not a lot of people that looked like me on television or models or things or in theater or things I would watch or in the music industry where I would look and say, oh, that looks like me. Look, that woman's accomplished something. She looks just like me. Her hair is woolly and it's worn, like they looked like my mother. That's how they looked. So not only did my father find this white woman attractive, and then as a young girl, I'm registering myself around that and saying, oh, well, my dad likes that and I'm not enough. And then look at theater and that looks like that. People that are beautiful or successful look like my mom. They don't look like me. And so my very first decision around that was that I was just ugly and not wanted. That was something that was so baked in all my dolls. They didn't have mixed dolls and different kinds of the things that they have now for children, the stories, and there's biracial storybooks that you can read. There's so many things that didn't exist then. That was at a time where you want to get your project done, the library closes at this time and that's it. You don't have internet to be working off of, right? It was so hard for me. It took so many years for me to accept. It's interesting. I'm 53 and I didn't go natural with my hair until I was 49. Just recently I went natural, and it was all part of this process. My mom didn't have, there's so many white mothers who are very, very involved in ensuring that history and the culture of their mixed race child is alive, that their hair texture is honored. And my mother didn't know. She didn't know any of that. And she didn't have the internet and all these stories to help. And she had no idea what I was going through. I remember a very important time when I was I think I had to be probably about 14 years old. And we got into this argument, my mom and I was sharing my world and she kept dismissing. I could tell, every time I would say my pain, and she was like, oh, come on, it's not that bad. And I was like, listen, you don't know what my world is like. What are you talking about? And as I told her the racist things that I had been through, the way that I had been treated in school, the mean girl spirit that was alive and real against me, that every time I tried to shine, that I was diminished, that I couldn't be accepted with any one group. I couldn't just hang with the Latins and be like, yep, you're accepted. I couldn't hang with white people. Yep, you're accepted. I couldn't hang with the Black people. Yep, because it was like, what are you? What are you? I can't even figure it out what you are. And it's natural for children to be like that once they start discovering their differences. I didn't know any because nobody had that conversation with me. And I remember my mom was looking at me like, what are you talking about? And finally, she just burst into tears and she was like, I never, ever thought that you would go through that because you're my daughter. You came from me. And I was like, but I don't look like you. You are in a world I will never know. And it destroyed my mom's heart in that moment. I will remember her face and her eyes for the rest of my life, because it was the first moment she realized that she had not even seen what I had gone through. She had no idea the pain that I was in. We have an extraordinary relationship now, but it took so many conversations and so much mending because I just felt, even to her, the way that she would interact with me didn't have that knowing in the background to say, hey, you're going to go to school today. Or, oh, what are you crying about? Oh, you're crying over your hair, that you got your hair relaxed, but it's still curly. And so you feel bad. Oh, I understand. I've been through it. She had no idea. No idea. So for me, I'm going to tell you, it was so impactful that when I did go natural, and it's been about 3-ish years, my mom, it had been so long that I had been natural. My mom, because she lives I'm in Seattle and she's in Berkeley, California. And she kept seeing my pictures like on Facebook and everything. She was like, what are you doing to your hair? And I was like, what do you mean I'm growing it natural? She's like, that's not your hair texture. I was like, Mom, you don't even remember what my hair texture is, because I don't remember it either. But I'm going to tell you, as I was going natural, I kept finding myself at my age crying because I was reconnecting with the way that my hair naturally grew out of my head. It seems so insignificant, but if people understand what the Crown Act is, it is not insignificant, because it's only been a few years in parts of the United States where it is legal for us to wear our hair that it naturally grows out of our head at work and not be discriminated against legally. Just a few years that has happened. So the Crown Act is so significant, and the emotions that it brought up to reconnect with my hair, to find it beautiful. It took me 2 years walking by the mirror when I wear my afro to look and not go, oh, who's that woman? Her hair is cute. And I'm like, oh, that's me. Oh, that's me. I didn't know that was me. So I'm sure that clearly, now that I share this story, could not be more vivid, that I would be in a company called Amplify Voices, and that it would resonate for me to tell you that, for me to feel invisible, and now to have it part of my purpose, that I'm like, oh, you are beautiful. Oh my goodness, your hair, your skin, your voice, your stature, your disability, whatever it is just beautiful. It's what makes you special. And it's why also people ask me typically when I'm on podcasts as a guest, like, who are my role models? And I say, I don't have role models. I am my own because I'm so proud of what I've been through. I'm so proud. And now you can't get me to wear my hair straight in a picture because I feel it's my duty now, especially in my level of success as an executive female, that we have pictures of me in business next to Pete Carroll, next to other things that I do with this hair texture. I mean, I have it in a bun now because we had that conversation about early mornings and not being ready. But oh, no, now you'll see me forever with my hair texture in every possible business picture possible, because I want that little girl to see that big hair and to go, oh, and she did that with her life and she's in that position and she doesn't straighten her hair. Oh, okay. Well, I'm good. And I need other businesses to see that too. When you hire an executive person, when you're in whatever industry, don't expect her to straighten her hair. That's not professional or more professional. So I don't have the greatest story in terms of like, oh my gosh, and I learned so much. I even started collecting dolls with textured hair now because it was something I never had before, just as a means to close that door and complete that part of that little girl in me that never had that. I'm big on that. Like if I need to heal something, I'll heal it with prayer, with meditation, with physically working out, or sometimes it's with a tactile object that I have in my presence to say, okay, here, now you get it. Now you can just have this thing in your life that you didn't have, and then gift it to somebody when you're done with that healing process.
I love that. Talk to a younger Audrey. What advice would you give to a younger Audrey?
Oh my goodness. I think one of the biggest things is it's patience. It all works out. I think I just felt like, I know I felt so much like I had to rush everything because any minute things would be taken from me. And that comes from someone who in their heart and soul does not feel whole and complete, does not feel worthy. Because things just like sand or like water will slip through my fingers. So if I have something, I have to consume it. I have to experience it. I have to do all so quickly. If I rise through the ranks in my ambition, I have to just keep going. I can't be present. I can't enjoy it. I can't stop and learn something. I have to just keep getting the next thing and the next thing because of that origin story of me, of not being seen as the person who looks like I should look like. And now at this point, I'm still known as, well, boy, get involved, Audrey, you're going to find a business just blow up overnight. I'm known for that because, again, it's once you build that muscle, it's just done. It's like muscle memory at that point. But I have far more nuances now to my experience of life. I can slow down. I do slow down. I do practice gratitude. That's such a tremendous part of my life. And I will say that that's another thing that for the little Audrey, that's another thing that the pandemic brought me was I had been so wired around goals and ambition that I realized I did not have in my vernacular faith and hope, because faith and hope for me occurred like things you don't work for. If you have good results, it's because you did the work. If you don't have the results, you didn't do the work. I had never in my life leaned in on said, if I ask for something and I have faith and I do walk, that things will come to me in their own time. That was not anything that occurred to me. So I have now this space in which I can be, that I can, when things are not going the way that I wanted to, this is the first time in my life that I can say, I have faith that the right thing will be revealed, because I'm doing all the things that I know I need to be doing. And maybe I'm just not ready for it. Maybe it's not the right person. And I'm good with that. I'm good with that. That I didn't have when I was a little girl. I was so hard on myself. And now I can appreciate myself.
Audrey, I want you to have a monologue, and I want you to talk to this person, living or not. They've inspired you so much. Name the person, and what are you saying?
Oh, okay. All right. So there is a friend of mine who is a woman named Barbara Rothstein, and Barbara, special. So Barbara I think Barbara had to weigh like 400 pounds. She was this, and her personality was equivalent to that structure and size too. She'd walk in a room and you felt like it wasn't like taking up the space in the room, because she was so empowering. You never felt like she was taking any space from you. She was only giving you more space, but you knew when Barbara was in the room, she didn't have to say anything. And it was very, very interesting. We had come to being friends. She was older than me. So I think at that time I had to be probably in my early 30s. And she saw me. I remember she met me one time. She looked over and saw me and she just started talking to me. And it was this kind of thing that was in the unspoken, like, we're going to be friends. But for Barbara, she had her own unique take on being friends. Like, we'd see each other once a year or something like that. But when we sat down to talk, we talked for 10 hours and it felt like 45 minutes. Barbara was someone who was in the financial arena. In Wall Street, they had to build a bathroom for her because they didn't even have female bathrooms on that floor. But she was that much of a woman to be person to be respected. I'm a woman. And she was very wealthy. She had done her part for building up her own wealth. She had a penchant for cats. She had like a bunch of cats. It was just like, she was this crazy cat lady. It was hilarious. But in the latter part before she passed away, she had, on her own dime, would fly herself all over the world to be part of empowering young people in that they heal their pain, that they move, that they see their power, she was just incredible. And whenever she was in town, we'd sit down, which was like once or twice a year. And we had such an extraordinary relationship that I felt like that kind of experience that you have, that just knowing that person is walking the same planet as you feel empowered. I didn't even need to talk to her. All I had to do was think about her. And I felt like I exist for a reason. She gave me so much without ever even saying anything to me. And when she came to see me one day when I was living in Venice Beach, California, and she didn't look right. Her face looked very gaunt. And I was like, Barbara, what's going on? And she was just like, oh, I'm fine. I'm just a little bit sick. I just got back from Australia. And I was like, I knew intuitively something's not right. I said, you should go to the doctors. She's like, yeah, I will. And so that week she was texting with me and she was like, oh, I'm just not feeling well. I feel kind of scared. And I was like, well, what's going on? I'll come over. Do you want me to come over? She's like, no, it's fine. And then she died 2 days later. And when they asked me to speak at the funeral, and I found out right before the funeral that she did go to the doctors and she found out that she had stage 4 ovarian cancer. And she knew that there was no option for her. She took her own life. Her maid found her in her bathtub. She died alone. And this was a woman that had given so much to people in the world. And when I went to speak at her funeral, I opened my mouth and I burst into tears. And all I could say was, I am so angry. I'm so angry that she didn't talk to me. I'm so angry that I wasn't there. I'm so angry that the world will never know this woman who gave so much. All I could feel was this rage and this anger. I had never felt that feeling in my entire life before. And about a few weeks later, I was walking around, my world had just been turned upside down to have that level of loss. I'd never even had an experience of loss in my family, in my own blood, with somebody that was so empowering to me. I remember I was walking down the street and I walk and all of a sudden this cat comes in my walkway. And it was like this cat, cats are usually skittish, right? The street cats that come by. And this cat was like, stood right in front of me, like, I'm not moving, and was staring at me like Barbara did, right? And I was out in the street. I looked around and I was like, leaning down. I said, Barbara, is that you? Is that you? And I realized I must look like an insane person right now. But I just felt like it was a message, like, I'm telling you goodbye. This is my goodbye to you. And I carry her with me since then. I mean, it's been many and many years later. It's interesting that you asked me what's my legacy, because I think Barbara taught me when I healed I've never gotten over her being gone, but I have healed from my pain of not being there for her, of not having her here, because I talked to her constantly. But I think she taught me that thing that I was so upset about, like, people will never know, whatever. And I think she taught me, like, so what? I lived my life. I went out on my own terms. And sure, she went out in pain and she left afraid, but she was also set free. And she gave me that. She gave me that insight and that gift. I love her. I think she also taught me in our relationship to have a deep affinity and love, because I had to build that with my own mother, like that story that I shared. And so now I have this depth in my relationships with women that I feel like Barbara gave me and left behind when she left.
Audrey, thank you for being so authentic and sharing that story. And so sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
What can we do right now to support Amplify Your Voice?
I think that, listen to the podcast. please, find out on any platform, you'll find us on our website, amplifyvoices.io, you'll find us. But as a practice in your own life, I would say that there's little things that I tell, especially with the white community in business, that I'll say little things like, go to your LinkedIn and look at your connections and count how many Indigenous people, Black women, brown men, disabled, any type of outside the norm of people's lives. They say that 75% of the United States, of the white community, 75% do not have a person of color in their immediate network. And it's just not representative of what the United States is. So even I myself, with what I've shared, even I myself go into my Instagram, I go into my LinkedIn and I check and I say, is my LinkedIn, is my Instagram, are my social things that pop up in front of my eyes all day long, is it represented? Just let me look at the data in the United States. Oh, the minority majority is about 48% of the United States and this and that. And is my LinkedIn representative of at least what the United States is? Because I think that we end up in our silos and we end up with our relationships, and that's great and that's fine if you have everybody around you that looks like you. But I don't think that gives you an access to compassion or understanding or a sense of wonder and discovery to say, oh, that's interesting. A big part that I have as well is ensuring that young people, that I never reach that age where I'm going like, oh, those young people, come on, that I'm always learning from them. I think that comes from, I'm sure you've experienced having children and having young people around you because you have a deep connection with affinity and learning and getting in their world. But no matter what they listen to, or even with my son and what style clothes they're wearing or whatever, I always am like, oh, tell me more about that. Why is that attractive to you? Why do you listen to that? Let me listen to it with you and teach me. I think that's something that's very empowering, that just Amplify Voices is not about figuring people out and figuring out the answer. It's really about living in the questions. And if we could live a little bit more like scientists, because scientists exist inside of inquiry, you understand why breakthroughs happen in science, because they live in the questions. And it's something we as human beings can apply. And that's what I feel Amplify Voices does, is to bring people in the forefront that maybe have been in the margins. Maybe you haven't listened to it. Maybe you didn't think that person was a leader or had something to contribute to you. But just put a sprinkle of that in your life, like a little seasoning on your food, and switch up your season every now and then. You'll find your palate expands and you're able to make more fabulous dishes. I think it's the same way with us. So I feel at the end of the day, how people truly, beyond listening to the podcast and the things that we're creating to expand people's minds and bring different kinds of people into your home and into your mind and into your ear, is just to do that actively yourself. It really does, by little micro practices, expand your ability of empathy and compassion.
The word is listening.
Mm-hmm.
What is that resounding sound or message that your generation is saying we should listen to?
I would say that the biggest thing that we should, in my generation, so my generation is Generation X, and I would say the biggest thing that we should listen to, that we've learned, is to listen to people's pain, because it sets people free. I think in the ambitious go-getter, goal, gotta fake it till you make it generation that built that whole world, I think a big part of that was suppressing painful things that we were going through in honor of looking good. And I think the thing to do now, and I think a lot of this younger generation is really showing us how they're sharing, not 100%, but a lot of them are sharing, this is my pain, this is how I feel. I think this is taking a page out of their book and saying, hey, you know what? We need to stop pretending that everything's okay. We need to start revealing the places that we're in pain, because if you shove something down, it never evolves and it stays with you, whether it's physically located in your body and resorts as some pain or some disease, or it shows up in, this constant sort of rat wheel of this reoccurring way that your relationships turn out. Like, oh, that's familiar. Oh, that happened in the last relationship. That's like means that you have not healed something. You haven't moved through it. So I think a big part of people my age and what we really, really is empowering for us to do is share what you're going through. It doesn't define you. This too shall pass, but it won't pass if you can't share it.
Talk about motherhood, money, and managing life.
Oh, all together? It rolled up like that? They're each their own podcast episode. Motherhood. I never wanted to be a mother as in a reaction to the pain that I had in my relationship with my mother. I had my son, Christian, when I was in my early 20s because the man that I was with, his father, really, really wanted to have a child. But like I've told Christian, when I did find out that I was pregnant, there was a voice inside of me that was like, yes, this is my child. I'm going to have him. I never was the right mother for him. Oh, mom, you're not like other moms. Why can't you just be normal? I wasn't the right mom for him. But we have an extraordinary relationship now. We've healed all of what I wasn't, and he's embraced who I am. Motherhood for me was such a profound experience because I, in my mind, with my ambition, was like, oh, anybody could be a mother, but not anybody could build a business. And what I learned was, while anybody can be a mother, it is the most extraordinary journey that one can take. And not to say anything about women who don't choose to not have kids or cannot have children. I would definitely say that what I have learned from mothering, in the same way that Pete says that who he is as a purpose is a great dad. And that's his self-expression with everything he does. For me, I get that. I would have not been able to understand that in my 30s or even my early 40s. I really understood the power of mothering and that expression. So I say that about motherhood, and it's absolutely, and any parent understands this, it never ends. It never ends. And you evolve into a new space. You asked about money. Oh my goodness. I think the one thing I have to say about money is that it has no connection to your self-worth. And yet we all seem to have it so collapsed with worth. Any dum-dum can make money. We've seen that over and over again. It's a matter of your understanding that money is a resource, just like love is a resource, just like knowledge is a resource, just like land is a resource, food is a resource. It's just one other resource. And if you focus on it and you understand the rules, so to speak, and how you structure it, people that work at 9-to-5 jobs and then say, I just want more money, and then you need to do something different, or you need to add another lane to what you're doing. Because if you're a 9-to-5, then you're going to have a lid at some level, and it's not completely in your control to make more money. So the one thing that was the greatest thing ever was when I uncollapsed my own self-worth from money. And I think that's a big reason why people have such a reaction to asking for a raise, asking for more, asking to charge more because they need to deserve it or they're not enough. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you feel or what you think of yourself. Money is a separate entity. And the energy that you give it is what it brings to. Just uncollapse it from your self-worth. And what did you say about what was the third one? Ambition, goals? What'd you say?
Managing life.
Ooh, managing life. See how I didn't even catch that? Managing life. What a sentence. I don't think you can manage life. I think that's really, it's much like the ocean, that you have to build a profound relationship to it. The tide comes in, the tide goes out. Sometimes it's torrential rains. And if you don't respect the ocean, it will take you down. But if you understand the wind, if you understand the tides, if you understand that you, like on a surfboard, can ride that next wave to the next space. And that's what I think about managing life.
If you conducted this interview, Audrey, what is the one question you would have asked yourself? I want you to ask the question and answer it.
Why leadership, and why leadership now? And I would say because we are at a point, like when I talked about the pandemic and George Floyd's murder and the cascade that caused around the world. And if you look at the last few years of the Me Too movement and the cancel culture that's happening and all of these things that human beings tend to resist and go, oh, this shouldn't be happening and people should be able to say what they want and all of this stuff, we tend to lose perspective to step outside of ourselves and see that we're in a moment in a time of history that is a paradigm shift. And as things open up, we must evolve with it. And leadership is one of those things that is the most prominent. That's why you're seeing people who are leaders get canceled. You're seeing people that are leaders now go and have to be on trial. You're seeing people in society say, you can't talk to me that way. You can't be sexist. You can't just have the good old boys club. And instead of, like we always do as human beings, because we resist change, even if it's good for us, surrendering to it and being able to recalibrate what it means to lead. Because look, we don't need some be all end all leader every 30 years or so. We all have areas to lead in, whether that is our family, whether it is our own personal life, whether it is our community, whether it is a certain charge we have in life or an impact that we want to have or what have you. There's 6.5 something billion people in the world. Believe me, we need many, many, many more leaders of all different shapes and sizes and looks and walks and backgrounds. And so to me, one of the biggest things that I find so much joy in focusing on leadership is expanding it to the point where you look at the person next to you and you understand, you both have an understanding of accountability, that there's no blame here. There's no somebody else's fault. I am accountable for my experience of life. I am accountable if I don't like it, that it alters. I am accountable also for the way that I leave people, to know that if I treat someone disrespectfully, if I don't listen to them, I affect the rest of their day and they affect other people's day. And I think we forget that when we're not leading a company or we're not doing all these things, that just in the course of the day, you can have an impact by the nature of that pebble dropping in the water and the ripple effect. You can have an effect in the course of your day and how you treat people on hundreds of people's lives, because that person goes home and then maybe is short with their children. And then those children go to bed and maybe cry about their day. I mean, it just goes on. And we forget that. So I think leadership is such a profound topic to deconstruct and innovate. And it's reached its time. And I knew as soon as I thought about it, I was like, yeah, that's the word I want to play with. I want to rejigger that one. So that's why leadership and why now.
We've come to the part of our interview. It's called Fun Facts Lightning Round. I'm going to ask you a series of questions and I want you to give me very quick answers. If there is something you desire not to answer, feel free to say pass. Okay. Are you ready for the Fun Facts Lightning Round?
Yes.
Your favorite color?
Green.
Your first job?
Judy's, a department store.
The last movie you saw?
I don't remember, but the last TV series I saw was ER.
You relax doing what?
Laying down with my dogs.
Your favorite singer or rapper?
Future.
Your favorite dance song?
I don't know. You got to ask me when's the last time I danced. I don't know.
What food you eat every week, no matter what?
Avocados.
Your favorite month?
September.
Workout or hit the couch?
Workout.
Audrey, thank you so much for spending time with us on Black Entrepreneur Experience Podcast. Before we let you go, feel free to share with our audience the best way for them to connect with you and to support your business. And feel free to leave all your social media handles.
Great. Well, one of the best ways to reach out to us is at www.amplifyvoices.io. Our podcasts, you can find all of them and the upcoming ones on the website. And we have some really, really amazing upcoming hosts on there. The other great way to reach out to me is on LinkedIn by my name, Audrey Cavenecia, or to go on Instagram. And I'm Unlikely Podcast with Audrey. And then, especially for the Black community of leaders and innovators, and please reach out to me because we're always looking for the next podcast hope to post to develop. So you can reach out to me at audrey@petecarroll.com and share your book, share what you're up to, share your vision. And I'm here, I'm listening, and like I said, looking. So we're doing both podcasts and developing educational content that is going to go into licensing deals. That's outside of podcasts, but in the business world. So there could be lots of areas for us to collaborate and play.
Thank you, Audrey. That's a wrap.
Thank you. It's so great meeting you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.